If your agency stops when you do, you don't own a business, you own a job.
For me, it was always about I love this company, but I want to be in dominion over it. It does not control me. I'm not going to work on the weekends.
Joe built his agency to the point where it ran without him. And that's exactly why when he sold it, it was so simple to sell.
I build systems. I'd rather make a little bit less money than miss an important event with the family or have a business that I disdain.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of From Grind to Gold. And we've got a great guest today. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Tony. I'm happy to be here.
Maybe give us a little bit of history here, because yours is a little bit has a few ups and downs and sideways roads, you know.
My story is kind of interesting. I actually started an agency out of necessity. So I was doing an oil spill response calculator as a freelance web developer for NOAA, and I had left a job in Seattle to do this freelance contract, and I'm like, I want to have my own company. But it was just going to be me until my hands completely crapped out. I could no longer type for 10 months to a year. I had body pain all over, and I had no idea why. I ended up reading a book out of all things to solve it. It's really weird. If you have this problem and you're a programmer, email me or reach out to Tony. He'll give you my email. But anyways, I hired someone because I had to, because it was either that or I was going to go back to the restaurant business where I started. And so I had a bunch of people dictating for me. I was literally dictating code, hell on earth, right? I was having people from actually my small group at church would come over and they'd type for me, and I'd pay them $10 an hour and give them Subway. But eventually I got sick of that. So I hired someone and got my first employee. And I remember just thinking, I was going to IKEA to get a desk. And I remember just thinking, I've left, okay? I'm no longer in the building, and the mission continues. So that started kind of a 12-year agency. It was just me at first, and then, I hired more people. I started working myself out of the equation on different roles. And eventually, I think at our peak, we were 10 to 15 people. But, I really wanted my agency to just run really, really smooth. My goal was to pay myself and bank $5,000 a month till I was 50. That was my simple rinse and repeat strategy. And I did it for many, many years. For me, it was always about I love this company, but I want to be in dominion over it. It does not control me. I'm not going to work on the weekends. I was starting my family. I had small kids towards the end. And I just like to systematize everything. And this was, of course, way before AI, and some of this stuff was easier. But we had our own internal systems for business intelligence, for client portals. And one of the things that I absolutely dreaded was writing proposals, because, I've shared this on a lot of podcasts I've been on, but proposals are stressful because the stakes are high. Okay. If you get it wrong, you can leave money on the table, or you set up your company for absolute failure, right? You didn't control the scope. You weren't clear on what was supposed to happen. But then they're stressful because they're time sensitive. Every day that goes by that the proposal's not out the door, you hold the stress of, I could lose this, right? Because they're talking to your competitor, your prospect is. And so I wanted to work on this system. And I was, we're using Google Docs and exporting it as a PDF. And then you got to make a change to that, and you got to re-export it and reattach it. Version nightmare. That's the bottom floor. We then switched to PandaDoc. I used it for years, but I just got sick of some of the limitations. I wanted to be able to have way more configuration. And so we decided we're just going to make the pricing table. We wanted to make a way where we could kind of outline all the scope, give them options, allow them to select stuff. And then eventually we would just take a screenshot of that and throw it back in PandaDocs and say, that's the scope. And just real simple. Well, long story short, we finished the thought. I wanted to be able to, we wanted to be able to just have it all in there and not be restricted. And so that was kind of the birth of Smart Pricing Table. It wasn't called that back then. And then, ended up selling my agency about 5-6 years ago and decided I've got to take this thing to the market. I've always wanted to. So that's kind of the overview.
Hey, thank you for watching today's video. I wanted to take a little break here and ask you something. If you are a marketing agency owner and you're feeling successful about what you're doing in your agency, you're making money, things are going well, but you feel a little bit trapped and you're kind of searching for that next thing, that next big thing to solve, I just encourage you to stop for a second. And before you decide what to do next, learn your agency owner archetype. It's free. It teaches you about your personality and your identity and why your identity keeps you in a loop of making the same move over and over again, and makes it so that you and your agency are kind of stuck in the same place. Anyway, it's a great report. It only takes a few minutes to fill out. Get your agency owner archetype today. And thanks for watching. What was the impetus of you saying, "Oh, I want to sell my agency"? Because I'll tell you, a lot of folks in the agency world, they just get on that grind wheel and continue to grind and go and grow and get set back. And it's a growth. It can be, and scale can be messy. Not everybody's a systems thinker like you are.
Right.
Although AI is forcing people, I think, to be more like that. But tell me what went through your head and your heart when you're like, oh, I got to sell my agency, and here's why. And who did you sell it to?
Yeah, well, I sold at the best of times. When I sold my agency, the story I always tell is I had about 5 hours of required work per week, and probably 80% of that was financial. And I just didn't want to outsource that, just more sensitive data. I had a full-time sales guy. I had a lead project manager. I had multiple designers and developers, and I had probably the best right-hand man in the world. His name was Cameron. Things were great. We had just maybe a year before I sold something like that, we had landed a new website for Bluetooth.com. That was like kind of every agency has its milestones, right?
Right.
Time really stopped when you get to build their website. It kind of stopped, and I just had a contact there, and we had a good portfolio. And really what ended up happening actually was my family and I moved to Idaho for some education stuff for our kids. That's what kids do to you, right? You're like,
Yeah.
I was firmly planted here, but then my kid has some elbow thing or he has some kind of allergy and then you just up and move your family. But for us, it was education. I wanted to give my kids a lot better than I had growing up. And so we decided to move to Idaho and pursue a private education option we had. And for me, people sell for all sorts of reasons, but I just didn't, after a couple years of running it remotely, I just didn't enjoy it as much. I got disconnected from the culture. I felt like it was going to be harder for me to really retain my best people because the CEO's in another state. And so I ended up having the easiest sale in the world. I sold it to my friend and right-hand man who still owns the company. And, I'll say when you sell it to an internal key employee, everything is really, really easy because he knew everything. He'd been with me for about 10 years. I
Oh,
can't,
interesting.
I cannot help with, I cannot identify with horror stories. I cannot help with complicated acquisitions. Mine was probably maybe a record for the easiest ever.
Well, it's interesting because you had taken the time to build the systems and get yourself to a place where your agency wasn't owner dependent. And that also makes it a ton easier.
Right.
How many people, when you sold, how many people in the agency, W-2 contractors total, roughly, would you remember?
We had actually downsized quite a bit. It was shortly after COVID, and as you remember, people were not closing deals. We were kind of every agency I think has a fear of the fiscal cliff, and that fear had never materialized until about then. But we probably had about 9 to 11 people for the previous year. But when I sold, I think we were down to like 5 people.
Hmm.
Just kind of a more core team, and it was definitely a time of reorientation. But it was also it was again easy to sell because it was so straightforward and simple, and then you even had less team to handle. And it was also, I'll also say it's kind of sickening, but I don't think I'm alone in this. The layoffs that came from COVID actually led to the most profitable months in the company as well. You were
Yeah.
forced into a situation that, you're hesitant. I'm a people pleaser. I don't like people letting people go, and I did it out of necessity, and it ended up, in hindsight, actually being one of the best moves.
It forced everybody to think differently, similarly. Well, maybe not similarly, but it was a forcing event for sure.
Right.
AI is also kind of this forcing event.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go down the AI rabbit hole here because there's a lot of things we could do, and I know it's impacted smart pricing table. So what's interesting to me is it sounds like along the way you've really stuck to systems thinking, systems builder, and and leveraging the businesses that you have for their purpose so that you can have your purpose, which in your case is family, right? But you
Good
also
part.
are an engineer. There's kind of, I'm hearing two parts of it, right? Like whatever I do, I don't want me to be beholden to it.
Right.
I want to own it. But I don't want it to own my life.
Right. Right.
And you've lived your life. So in your agency world, do you think that has always been a conscious thing, or is that just who you are? How have you thought about that? Because there are a lot of agency owners out there that could leverage, some of that thinking.
Well, I know I talk to agencies. I talk with them relatively often now, but I talk to agencies a ton when I owned my agency. And one of the things I heard all the time is that people hate their agency, right? It's always like this bipolar, like I'm about to sell. No, everything's okay. I want to sell. And you're constantly walking yourself off a cliff. I know that in the worst of times, that's what I would do. I think what happened is at a young age, I think I was like maybe, actually, you know what it was? My first SaaS product was online staff scheduling for fast food restaurants. I worked at a Burger King, okay? And I have to tell a quick little side story. This is fun, Tony. So I worked at Burger King. It was my first job. My grandparents raised me. I had a kind of a rough upbringing. I got my first job. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a car. Like this is gonna be amazing. Like I got $300. I have no idea where all this is gonna go because it's so much money. And I wanted to be able to check my schedule online. I wanted to check my schedule. So I'd call the manager and she'd get annoyed as all heck at me. Like, just check your schedule. And I remember just thinking like, I'm going to hack her computer and I'm going to make it upload my schedule online so I don't have to get berated constantly. Long story short, that turned into a company that's no longer in business, but it's called Mr. Schedule. At our peak, we had like 170 restaurants using the software, and it allowed managers to build quick service schedules for their employees based on time off requests, availability, weather, like all this different stuff. And I remember very distinctly, I was a teenager. I think I started this when I was like 16. And I remember when I was like 17 or 18, I was working on something. I'd promised my other partners and one of the owners of the franchise that I was working with, I told him, I said, I think we could even automate scheduling. And I'm just some 17-year-old kid. What the heck do I know? I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But I'd learned to code like 2 years earlier. It was the worst code possible. It was really bad, hard to manage. And I remember one night as a very unhealthy teenager, I was up till like 4 a.m. working on the automated scheduling algorithm. And on my local host, it worked really good. And then I pushed it to the live server and I tried making a schedule, and it looked like dog's breakfast. And Tony, as a like, I didn't have a lot of guidance. My grandparents loved me, but like they were tired. Like
Yeah.
they already had their family. And I remember I fell on the ground as a 17-year-old, and I started weeping. I started just bawling because I had told these other older guys that were part of the company that I brought in, like, we're going to do this and it's going to be amazing. And I was missing deadline after deadline after deadline. And I eventually conquered it, and we made the schedule automated, and it was amazing. Okay. But it was a long, hard road. And I feel like as a 17-year-old, I almost killed myself from the pain. And I learned then, if you don't do business right, it will destroy you. And I like working extremely hard. I'm a hustler. I have checklists for my checklists. I'm super organized. But I decided from a young age, probably early 20s, I'm never doing this again. I'm going to work smart before I ever work that hard ever again. And if, I'm very thankful, very
Yeah.
fortunate that I've never, it's always been, I build systems. I'd rather make a little bit less money, than miss an important event with the family or have a business
Yeah.
that I disdain. So there's your answer.
Well, extremely clear on what you want. What I run into, and this is what happened to me, is when I was able to move out of my agency, I still own it or own part of it,
Right.
one of them, but I'm not in it day to day. And I had this feeling of like, well, now what do I do?
Right.
I can't jump back in because we've set it all up so I don't have to.
Right.
So now what do I do? And because I thought I tied what I did to my value.
Right.
And that's why, that's why I wrote the book From Grind to Gold. You've kind of figured that out. But you did it intentionally, and that's what I'm trying to lead. That's what I feel like my purpose is, because I think there's a lot of agency owners out there that have this gap where they think they're their agency, but they're in their mind they want something else. They want to have, and they think, oh, I've got to let go of my agency to do that other thing, to be that other next level person or fulfill that purpose. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do that. You don't have to sell. You can sell. And whether you do or you don't, you want that agency to be an asset that's as valuable as it can be.
Right.
For the people in it and around it. And it's okay to let go of the agency because there's a bigger door waiting for you to open on the other side of it. But
Right.
it just, some people I think are afraid of that unknown. You're a scrapper. You've set it up so that you can make a transition, and now you're, maybe monetarily you're in a better place, but you certainly have the freedom of what you spend your time on,
Right.
who you work with and why. And you have a real clear vision of what your purpose is in those people's lives and in the lives of yourself and your family.
Right.
That's a great place to be. I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of people get there.
I think what I always tell my wife is I always want to work hard. I don't know how to retire. I think I'll be doing entrepreneurial stuff when I'm 80. I think that's when you fall apart, when you just stop doing that. But I think the question is, what I want to work on, what I want to work on, not what I'm forced to work on. Right.
Yeah.
At my old agency, I had 5 hours of required work per week. How many hours do you think I have required work at Smart Pricing Table, Tony?
Either 5 or less.
5.
I'm guessing.
Yeah. Honestly, it could be even less. But it's about 4 or 5 hours to maintain everything. But it's growth. It's like primarily all growth. That's what I'm focusing on, and that's my call, right? If I want to pause growth and work on something else or a tangent, I can do that. But it's besides, like, every once in a while duty calls and there's like a true fire emergency. Besides that, it's amazing to have systems really build something smooth. I love what something you said, Tony, reminded me of. Back when I read books, one of the books I read in my agency that just really had a mark on me was the E-Myth. And he talks about it's like the E-Myth Revisited or something like that. And he talks about building your company like a franchise. And he did like a case study of like McDonald's, and how is it that you can go to this McDonald's and then go to another one 2,000 miles away, and it's almost the exact same experience. And he said, you're building it like a franchise, not because you're actually going to create a franchise model, but when you force yourself to think that way, you start smoothing out all the rough edges and creating something that's very repeatable. I think for agencies, like the big thing is like you gotta see those departments of your agency and then the subcategories inside of that, and then you need to build systems or master operations in each one of those. It's not infinite,
Yeah.
so it's doable.
Yeah. That's a great thing to leave on. Um, that's been a great conversation, Joe. I really appreciate the way you approach business and life. And I just wanted everybody to see that watches this, you can build this, you can do it. And you don't have to be necessarily, you just have to want that thing.
Right.
Because we're all
Right.
capable of working hard. Anybody who's run an agency that's in the million to 3 million, that or even lower than that, you've got the talent to do it. It's not a lack of talent or smarts.
Right.
It's what do you want, and then the discipline to stick to it and build that thing with systems.
Before we end, Tony, can I do a 60-second shameless plug for Smart Pricing Table?
You absolutely can, man. I appreciate it.
Sweet. So if you're an agency owner and you hate writing proposals, you don't have that system that we're talking about, do yourself a favor and check out Smart Pricing Table. We have a couple resources. Number one, if you want to do a demo, you can book one. That'll actually go directly with me because I love talking to customers and I'm an expert with the product. Zero pressure. But if you want to check it out, book one of those demos. We also have a free guide called the Profitable Proposal Blueprint. It's a quick read, and I'll also put you on my newsletter. I do a weekly or biweekly newsletter where I talk about some very deep and provoking thoughts, Tony. So it's a good way to get connected. So,
well, I can tell you we have multiple agencies running on Smart Pricing Table for their sales teams. So I know it's great, and I know you've also. I almost don't want to say this, but you've rolled out some new stuff with AI and how you've rolled it out, and I can tell you that stuff is crazy amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll save that for later, but yeah, absolutely check it out. Is smartpricingtable.com.
.com. Yep.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks for your
thanks for
time,
having me,
Joe.
Tony.